Hello students, in the last class we have discussed the meaning of indifference curve and also we discussed the assumptions of indifference curve. Today we will discuss the properties of indifference curve. Actually we have already discussed in the last class that what is the indifference curve. Indifference curve is a curve which shows various combinations of two goods which gives a equal satisfaction to the consumer. On the basis of that we have studied. Now we will going to discuss the properties of indifference curve. First properties, you are saying that IC slopes downward. The feature of first feature is IC slopes downward, means left to right downward. It's mean that when the consumer want to increase the quantity of a one good, he has to sacrifice some quantity of the others. In the figure you can see that there's oranges on the x-axis. You can see the oranges on the x-axis. The consumer is buying 2 oranges and 5 apples. Now suppose he want to shift, he want more oranges, he want 3 oranges, then he has to reduce the oranges from 5 to 3 because of income has given. So if the given income, he has to just shift his preferences, oranges from 2 to 3 and apples from 5 to 2. Because of this attitude of a consumer, it always makes the IC curve downward from left to right. It means that he has a given income and he has to buy any combination within the income. He cannot go the more limit of the income because he don't have that much of income that he can take the 3 oranges with 5, because this combination 5 to 2 and 3 to 3, it is only possible for a consumer because he knows that the income he is earning, he can only purchase these combination 5 to 2 or 3 to 2. This is the main attitude. This is the main attitude when the consumer try to preference. That makes him more to adjust his combination according to his income. Now the next property is IC is convex to origin. Convex to origin means, it means that when we say that IC is convex to origins, means that the slope of the IC tends to decline as we move along the IC from left to right. It means that IC convex to origin means when we move from left to right. When we move left to right, it means that the IC declines. That is convex to origin. The slope of the IC is called marginal rate of substitution. It indicates that rate at which the consumer is willing to substitute one good for the other. From left to right, when the IC is declining, it means that it is a rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution means the consumer is willing to shift, willing to exchange the goods from one to other. When he is trying to increase the quantity of good X, then he has to reduce the quantity of Y. It means that he is the rate at which he is exchanging the product, that is called marginal rate of substitution. Because of that, the IC is declining from left to right, that is IC is convex to. Now the next point is why should MRS decline? MRS means marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution, why it declines from left to right? The more and more units of goods are consumed by his consumer, he intensity of desire of goods tends to decline. Means, as you see already, the convexity of the curve from left to right means is declining. Means that the consumer more and more goods X he is buying and consuming, the intensity of the desire for that product is declining. Then the intensity to buy, the utility he is driving from that product is declining one by one as he increasing the products, and the desire intensity of desire willingness is trying start to decline, implying that marginal utility of goods X tend to fall on accordance with the law of diminishing marginal utility. The diminishing marginal utility law describes that as the more and more goods of X a consumer consume, the utility of that product is declined. On the other hand, as more and more good Y are given up, its intensity of desire of good tends to rise, and Y, when it start to give up more and more quantity of good Y, its intensity to buy, intensity to purchase these products increase, intensity of because he is giving up, the lesser the products and the utility is more. It is because this for every successive unit of X the consumer is willing to give up and less amount of Y. Accordingly, now we can write this MRS now. We can see this is you can understand now, when consumer is buying more or more good X, then intensity of good X start to decline, and when he is giving up more and more of Y, the intensity of Y start to rise. This is because of this the slope of IC curve is left to right decline, and this is you can see. Now we can write MRS like delta Y upon delta X. Delta means change in Y and delta X means change in X. Now the next property is higher IC curve, higher level of satisfaction. It means that already we have discussed the IC on one IC curve, the different combination of the two product gives a same level of satisfaction. But if a consumer want to get more satisfaction, higher satisfaction, then he has to move on higher level of IC curve. But how is it possible? Until he has a more income, because one IC curve he is spending his given income and he cannot move on the other one until he has a more income than before. The same level of IC curve, he is getting the same level of satisfaction in any point, whether he is this one or this one or this one, A, B, C. In IC curve 1, he moves from A to B, B to C. He gets a similar satisfaction, an equal satisfaction. But as he moves on IC curve 2, his level of satisfaction increase, and IC3 gives more satisfaction than IC2. So it's mean that the IC curve, this we call it a map, indifference map. Different IC curves from 1, 2, 3, and as we move the upper or higher level of IC curve, it gives a higher level of satisfaction. Now the next property is now the next property of indifference curve is IC do not cross or intersect each other. This is the another property of IC curve. Now you can see IC curve do not cross or intersect each other. Why? Because we already discussed in indifference map that a higher level of indifference curve always gives a higher level of satisfaction. Now you can see in this, if we say IC1, IC2, now you can see the point A. Both the IC curve are intersecting at point A. It means that the point A gives equal satisfaction. We already discussed in any point of one curve gives a same level of satisfaction. So how can it possible then we are moving in a higher difference curve and it is giving same level of satisfaction? It can't be possible. Then again, let's say B and C. This is another 2 point. Now B and C. At B we are going on a higher indifference curve, so it means that it is giving a higher level of satisfaction, and B is giving a lower level. So on the same indifference curve, how can it possible that we are getting the same level of satisfaction on A, which is we already discussed in assumption that it is not possible. A higher level of indifference curve always give higher level of satisfaction, so it never can be intersect one each other, because A is the point on both the curve. One point in both curve, it is not possible, so we can say IC does not cross or intersect each other. Now the next property, next and the last, IC does not touch x-axis or y-axis. Now you can see on figure that IC curve does not touch any axis, whether it is y or x. It means that if IC is touching the y-axis, that it means that he is not purchasing, the consumer is not purchasing any quantity of x. The consumption of x is 0, and here the IC is touching x-axis, means the consumption of y is 0. So it is not possible. When we just define a consumer is trying to satisfy his desire on buying the different kind of goods in according to his income. So here he choose a different combinations. He is not only buying one particular goods. So it means that IC does not touch any axis.